Good morning, my artsy friends. Welcome to our regularly scheduled Monday morning live. My name is Ken Johnson, your thrifty apprentice. If you're new here, I'm so glad to have you. This is a community where we share, grow, and learn together in all different types of art mediums. And so, if this is your first time, welcome, welcome, welcome. Today, friends, we are diving into a review of the Arta Watercolor 12 half pan pocket box, which we're going to get to in just a moment. But as usual, I am going to take a few minutes just to show you guys some things that are being worked on. Now, if you are a part of the Creation Station on Patreon, Sunday, a surprise live thrifty behind the scene reels video dropped where I took about 30 minutes live to walk all of Creation Station through all of the different projects that's coming up throughout the rest of March and into the beginning of April. So if you are a part of the Creation Station and you didn't get a chance to check that live out, go ahead, go watch it. It's going to take you through everything that's coming up really soon so that you will know. With that said, I am going to share a few things here. This Wednesday coming up, we are going to be having the review of Paint Crush's new three-piece travel brush system called the Joy Traveler. I have already started to shoot the video. Actually, I'm almost done. I'm at the point where I'm actually doing a little demo with the three brushes so that I can go ahead and wrap the edits for that video up. So that will be this Wednesday's pre-recorded release at 10 a.m. So if you're not subscribed, if you don't have that notification bell, um, pushed, go ahead and do both of those so that you don't miss the notification that YouTube sends to let you know that video is out. But we're using a few things in that video. We're going to be using the new travel brush system. I only figured that it was right to use the Art for Joy's sake paint palette since we were testing the paint brush brushes, and we are doing all of that testing inside Bendy Decide's 100% cotton watercolor sketchbook, which I did introduce you guys to um, last Wednesday's pre-recorded video, which brings me around to talking about the giveaway right quick. Now, of course, if you were here for, or if you got to see the last video release, it was on the Roman Smalls paints as well as Bendy Decide sketchbook. And in that video, there was a giveaway announced. So that giveaway is for the five-piece. Let me see if I can grab it right quick. It is for the five-piece Aquarius sort of beginner mixer set of Roman Small paints, as well as a brand new copy of Bendy Decide's sketchbook, watercolor sketchbook. So if you have not, go catch that video so that you can see how to enter. Um, it will take you going to Instagram in order to enter. This is an Instagram giveaway, but it is open to the entire art community, regardless of what your medium is. Just go check out the post that's uh, pinned to the Defiant Art Thrifty Apprentice Instagram page. Just follow the few steps to enter, and the announcement for the winner will be towards the end of the month. All right, where else are we going? What else did I want to show you before we jump into this review? I will give you an update on the overstock, um, the overstock art supplies, where I told you guys I was going to be panning up a bunch of watercolors that way I can list them on the Defiant Art website at a really super discounted price so that people who wanted to try different brands of professional watercolors could do it without breaking their pocket buying entire sets, especially if they may or may not like the set. So I am working really hard um, on that. I have to order some more half pans, but I'll just let you guys see. Like this is the set of, I'm doing three sets of camel watercolor simply because this particular brand does carry a small bit of an odor to it. So if you're odor sensitive, It might not be something you like. So because I wasn't too sure about that one, I'm only doing three. There's going to be three sets, and there'll be five mixing colors in each of those sets. And I've almost used up the half pans. I need to get some more half pans, definitely. And I've also, panned up and actually started to put the palettes together from the Lucas professional watercolors. And there are several other sets. So you guys just bear with me. And I promise you, as soon as I can, I'm going to get all of that put together, photographed, listed, and then we're going to have a release party. I haven't decided whether it's going to be um, on Palm Street or on Patreon. And if it's on Patreon, of course, it'll be open to all. So everybody will be able to see it, whether you're in or out of the creation station. Uh, but I'll work on it a little bit more later on down the road, but it is coming. All right, last but not least, before we get started, I have told you guys that I was contacted by a new art company. Well, that it's not new, relatively new. It's been around for a few months now. I've seen some reviews of its art products, but I did have a representative named Aaron from Hippie Crafter reach out to me. And you guys may have heard the story already on this little debacle, but she reached out to me. She wanted to know if she could send some art products for me to test and review and share with my audience. I told her yes. She sent the first package. Somebody decided to help themselves to it at my doorstep. So she did resend it. Those products are here. So here are the two products that I ordered from Hippie Craft. Well, was sent from Hippie Crafter. So there will be a couple of sponsored videos, quite a few of them. We're gonna do the watercolor set. We'll do the watercolor pencil set, and then I'm gonna have a couple of sponsored videos as well as review videos for these. Now, of course, you guys know that just because I received the products and am working with the company, that will in no way deter me from telling you my 100% absolute honest opinion on the products. So I just did want to let you guys know if these products have finally made it in, and we will start testing them sooner than later. But as you know, if especially if you saw the behind the scenes Thrifty Real video, there's quite a few projects coming up that I need to get worked on and out of the way. I'll be honest, I really was under the impression, friends, that, well, not under the impression. I really knew that I needed to go down to one pre-recorded video a week on YouTube. I did not realize how losing that additional video would kind of push me behind schedule on so many different things that I wanted to share with you guys. So I'm going to have to figure out how to work that out. Maybe we'll be talking about more than one product per pre-recorded video release moving forward. I'm not sure. My work schedule, my permanent work schedule continues to flip flop back and forth. Of course, I did tell you guys that my off days are no longer Sunday and Monday, but they're now Saturday and Monday. And now they're throwing it out in the atmosphere that it might move back to Sunday and Monday. So Mondays is the only fixed day, which is why we always have the regular schedule live on Monday mornings. As soon as I can get a stable second day, that'll be the day that I think I'm going to introduce another live, because it's easier to do live videos than to do an edit video, simply because of all the edits that have to be done. Whereas with the lives, you know, we talk live, real time, and then I'll go back and do a few edits to the live just to make it replay friendly, but it's nowhere near as strenuous as putting together an entire edit video for pre-recorded release. So yes, all of that being said, we will be getting to that art brand soon. So now let's jump into what we are doing today. So today we are having a review of the Arta Watercolor Pocket Box 12 half pan set. Let's start off with saying that this is an exclusive Jackson's Art sold product. It's my belief that Arta is one of the house brands carried by Jackson, because upon my research, I was not able to find the set or the brand anywhere else, especially not in any of the normal American places that I tend to look for art products. I was only able to find it on Jackson, which is what leads me to believe that it is one of their house products. Furthermore, I did go to the particular Arta page on Jackson to do some reading, and they do say quite a few wonderful things about the product on the sponsored page on jacksonarts.com. However, there is not much literature that actually comes with the actual set itself. So you get the box. Of course, you see here on the front is Art of Watercolor Pocket Box, 12 half pans. There's like a little digitized swatch over here that's supposed to show you what colors you have on the inside, although I do believe that's a generic color pattern there. On the side, Watercolor Arta. Same thing on the opposing side. Conforms to the ASTM D4236 regulation. It gives a QR code. It says it's not for kids under 3. I'm assuming the QR code will take you to information on the product. On the opposite side, it lets you know that the product is designed in the UK but made in China, but distributed by Jackson Art Supplies, which is why I do believe that this is specifically theirs, and it gives the address for Jackson Art Supplies on the back. All right, on the very back of the box, again, a digitized swatch sheet which shows the reference number for each color as well as the color name. Now, this box does not include any light fast, any transparency information, or any pigment numbers. Again, I went to the Arta website, and the verbiage in the description says that it is a highly light fast product. I do believe that's exactly how they put it. However, not even on the site was there any reference to pigment numbers or actual light fast testing. Okay, so then I decided, you know what, let's look a little bit further. I went to one of my go-to sources when I'm looking for a product that I'm looking for light fast information on, and I can't seem to find it anywhere else, which is Kimberly Crick's website. Kimberly Crick does all types of art supply, well, watercolor supply testing, and she tends to do her own light fast testing of different products and post the results. And even on her website, there was no mention of the art and watercolor set. So it is my assumption that not many people have either heard in this particular market, let me say it like that many people have not heard of it or have not tested it or did hear of it, did test it, and decided not to review it because it didn't fit, their overall product thing. So there's the information that I have on the light fast pigment information. Basically none. On the inside of the box, you are going to get a plastic palette. Now, this palette is becoming universal. You are seeing this style palette and produced by many different companies or used by many different companies to put their sets together. Now, originally, my first introduction to a palette like this was way back in the day with the Sequoia, um, the Koi Sakura Koi watercolor paint box, which I use quite a bit. And then Derwent came out with it, and now you're starting to see a lot of other brands come out with this sort of um, generic peel type, and I call it peel type palette. I'll tell you why in just a moment. But pretty straightforward, has Arta on the front, hinged plastic palette, very easy to open, no issues there. Pretty secure, snap tight lid that won't let your things joggle around. So if you wanted to use this for travel painting, you could. I mean, the box itself, let's see here, is about 5.5 inches one way and 3 inches the other. So you got about 5.5 by 3, and that's not bad. Pretty compact, can fit into a pocket, purse, book bag, satchel, things of that nature. So it will be easy to take it on the go to paint, especially if you're painting outside or doing plain air. As I said, the lid latches pretty securely, and on the inside of the lid, you're going to get 5 mixing wells. It is a pretty small footprint, but it holds quite a bit of paint. Now, I did leave that paint palette dirty there, and we're going to get to that in just a moment. So the actual paints themselves are inserted into half pans, and those half pans are inserted into trays. Again, you guys have seen this particular style of palette quite a bit now. Now, those half pans will remove from the tray. And this is, some people have their different opinions on this. I personally think that this is just shy of the amount of paint that you get in a half pan. So here's a standard half pan, and this is one of the pans that come. I mean, it's just a smidge. I mean, you can barely tell. I mean, so maybe it is equivalent to a half pan. It's just a completely different shape. Okay. Yeah. So that's how those are. Now the color arrangement form, I must admit, was threw me off a little bit, but I did leave it in the arrangement that they came in because that's the way that I swatched it. All right, so all of the paint is definitely machine cut. The machine did cut all of the paint pellets to be pretty much the same size, so I didn't feel like there was varying sizes in the paint. The formula and the consistency we're going to get to in a minute. Inside the palette is a two-part water brush. Again, kind of look like the one that Durant does with the Durant name there, but it's two parts and it does have a stopper on the bottom part just in case you're one of those people that need to carry your water brush pulled apart instead of put together. And of course, there's a sponge for wiping your water brush on when you're out and you're painting on the go. So that is pretty much the physical aesthetic of it. All right, so I did take time, of course, with you guys to swatch the paints out, and this is where we start to get into the actual nitty gritty of everything. All right, so let's just take a look here. We put down a black line to test opacity. We swatched the paints out. We swatched them out at mass tone at the very top, and then we put, a bit of water to allow the paint to carry itself down, just so we can see what the color would look like in a watered down form. Now, initially, I thought that there was going to be a huge shift from wet to dry with the paints, but there wasn't. Not even in the watered down form. And I guess it will depend on the type of paper you use, and I'll show you that when I get to the section of this review where I'm kind of going over what I've painted with them. So I did transfer the relevant information that I had from the back of the box, which was the color names, to the swatch sheet. For the most part, I was rather surprised because the paints are rather transparent. The only one that was a bit opaque was the light peach. It was the only one that left residue on the black line, which I was kind of expecting because you can look at it and tell that more than likely there is a white pigment mixed into that, maybe a PW5, maybe a PW6. It really just depends on what was more affordable for the manufacturing at the time. Outside of it, even with like the yellow ochre, which I would expect to have a little bit more sedimentation, it was actually clearer than even the light peach. So for the most part, they were decently transparent paints. I didn't really have an issue with that. All right. So then we did some color mixing, of course. And before we jump into talking about the color mixing, let me tell you with the swatching process what I discovered about the formulation. It is my belief that there are definitely more stretchers in this paint than there are pigments. Now, I can't even really verify its pigments because there are no pigment numbers given by the company. If I had to guess, it would more than likely probably be a dye that is infused on top of a substrate of some type as a delivery system. And that's kind of what they're going off of. Now, that's not to say that the dyes themselves don't have uh, a pigment number to them or a pigment base to them, but I definitely do not believe that this is comprised of a lot of pigments. I do believe that if there are some pigments in there, it's enhanced with dyes, it's enhanced with optical brighteners, and it definitely has fillers in order to stretch the pigment in the paint so that it'll go further. And that's not like surprising because with a lot of budget grade art products, especially the watercolor and the gouache side of things, when you start dealing with companies that do not have large or hugely recognizable names, do not have a huge budget for production or manufacturing, that tends to white label, which is what I do believe this is, you just find those different characteristics from brand to brand. Now, as to what factory may be making these paints, that, my friends, I am not sure of. I did pull a lot of different paint sets that I have here in the studio in order to see if I could compare them against what's here and if they felt similar to anything. But in all honesty, they didn't. What they remind me of the most are the DDD Praise paints from Timu, but I have long since gotten rid of those paints, so I did not have them for a comparison. What I will say is that for the price, that's probably one of the best Timu palettes I've tested. So on that note, the paints aren't terrible. They can definitely be painted with. You can create some really decent illustrations. And depending on the type of paper that you use them on, they definitely hold their saturation. You're not going to have a huge shift from wet to dry. Now, the bigger question for me is with no pigment numbers being presented, exactly how long would the overall composition that you create with them hold up before you see a significant difference in the way it looks when you finish painting it versus the way it's looking at the time that you are or reevaluating it, maybe 3, 4, 6 months down the road. And I have not done any light fast testing on this paint myself, so I really can't give you that answer. So these are just things that I wanted to throw out there so you can keep in mind in case this is something you decided you may have been interested in. So the paints re-wet really well. I really didn't have an issue with it. I do not recall pre-wetting the palette at any point before I started to paint with it. I'm starting to discover that even in the budget realm of things, many paint companies or many manufacturers, brands are starting to release easier, this is going to sound so crazy. They are starting to produce, let me say it that way, easier to release paints that do not require a massive amount of pre-wetting. The paints were not thirsty at all. They didn't suck up the water. They stayed wet relatively a long time in order for me to paint. Now, the one thing about them that did kind of throw me off is that the paints do kind of hold the moisture and they become a little goopy and you know, to the point where when you pick them up on your brush before you take them to your paper, you may want to kind of mix them out on a palette to make sure that you're not taking goop or too much of a paint over to your paper. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. But it wasn't so bad that you know you couldn't work with it or work around it. All right, so we did some color mixing charts here, and I do not remember exactly what colors were used. I'm gonna see if I can. So we started off with mixing a lemon yellow, the vermilion, and we used the cerulean blue, which gave us really cool and clean secondary colors. However, you know, the vermilion and cerulean, both being warm, do not give you as saturated or vibrant of a purple or violet as you would get if you were using a warm and a cool color to mix that, which we'll see in just a moment. But outside of that, those particular colors could be pulled. As a matter of fact, there are several different trio mixing sets that could be pulled from the actual 12 colors if you didn't want to paint with all of them in order to do a composition. Um, and they mixed well, as you can see. They mixed cleanly. They did not rush to mixing mud quickly, which was kind of surprising to me due to the fact that, you know, I just had the assumption in my brain that most of these paints are probably multi-pigment, multi-dye put together, and they would probably mix to make mud quickly. And I was pleasantly surprised to see that was not necessarily the case. Now, here we mixed the lemon yellow, we went with the vermilion, and we went with the Prussian blue. The Prussian blue being the coolest blue in the set. There is no ultramarine included. And I'll be honest, I'm not sure how I felt about that. Now, I get them giving us a cerulean and a Prussian, a warm and a cool. I get it. But and although Prussian is one of my favorite all-time colors, if I had to choose between having one warm blue, I'm sorry, one cool blue in a set, well, although ultramarine is kind of in between, it's more warm leaning. But if I had to choose between the two of ultramarine and Prussian, I would prefer to have an ultramarine in the set simply because on a normal basis, it's a more stable color, it's a more stable pigment. You won't have as many light fast issues with an ultramarine as you would with a Prussian. In this case, we don't have any pigment information at all. So who knows? The ultramarine may fade or may hold up as much or as hard as the Prussian blue does. It's just kind of one of those things. when you're working with a budget paint. Now, of course, if you're a person where pigment information and light fast information does not necessarily bother you, or it is not something you take into consideration on a regular basis, then, I'll just tell you right off. I think the palette is pretty cool for what it is, especially for what you pay for it. And we're going to get to that shortly as well. Here we mixed the lemon yellow. We went with the pale red and Prussian blue. And I was just trying out different color wheels to see if we could get clean secondary colors. And, we did. At the end of the day, we really did. Now, mixing a neutral, which I didn't put on this paper, and I'm not sure why. I was able to mix a neutral without any issues. The Prussian blue and the pale red actually mix together really well. You do have to be a little careful because it'll be green leaning at first, but the more Prussian you mix into it, the darker it's going to get. Now, it's not going to be like your Payne's gray type of dark, but you're definitely going to get a neutral that you can use that stands out against the other colors. Now here we did a bit of a flow test, and then I saved this spot to do a lift test with you all. And of course, classic Ken style, I want to do a lift test without a paper towel to do it with because, I'm crazy like that. And it's just how the world goes. I do not know why every single time I forget to grab a paper towel. Let's see, do I have a studio towel in here anywhere? All right, I might have to run and grab a paper towel, friends. I'm sorry about that. So we'll do the lift test in just a second. Let me stop and move on to some other testing we did here. So here I did a flow test. As you can see, those pigments do not really move or disperse. I'm not sure what type of binder they're using, but I can guarantee you it's not one that causes paints to disperse and flow at a rapid rate. I got a little bit of disbursement from what was at the vermilion, excuse me, but I also tested like the permanent green, the cerulean blue, and the pale red, and no flow. Not really. They are gonna be one of those paints that kind of sit on the paper and go where you want them to go, do what you want them to do. Next up, here we have a salt test, which most watercolors really do react about the same to salt. So you're definitely going to be able to get salt texture. You can use it for, like I tell you guys all the time, sand, frost, things of that nature. So yeah, you can go to town with creating texture with salt. And then I also did a granulation test. I tested the cerulean blue at the top and the Prussian blue at the bottom. Now there's no PB29, no ultramarine, which would be the blue that you would expect to be the most granulating. And other blues can be too, depending on whether or not the formula has PB29 included. Once again, we have no idea what pigments are in here. And as you can see, there was not any granulation. This is not granulation. This is just where the two paints started to blend together, and one particular part was wetter than the other. However, it did not cause a bloom there, which was actually kind of surprising to me. So, yeah, friends, I did not find any granulation in the actual paints at all. So there's that. I'm gonna grab a paper towel really quickly so that we can do the lift test. I'm going to go ahead and perform a lift test here. I'm just going to take a wet scrubber brush and I'm going to scrub out some of that paint. And I'm not scrubbing hard, I'm just letting it rub across the top of the color. And then I will lift. And as you can see there, it actually does pretty decent lifting considering the fact that we don't have pigment numbers and it could possibly be dye, and we don't have a lot of staining. There's a little staining, there's not a lot of staining. Hold it up so you can see it a little better. You can see just a small color tint along that line, but it will definitely lift back enough for you to get some highlights. It'll definitely lift back enough for you to get you some secondary highlights, and to get back to the white of your paper if you were trying to do highlights on like rocks or mountains or something of that nature. So it has a little itty bit of staining quality, but not much, not anything to be alarmed about. Here's the thing is, throughout the testing, I did not find terrible things about the paints. Um, they're just in a position where I can't really do a lot of recommendation for them on the entire light, fast, and spectrum of it. But if you were an artist that was just kind of looking for an everyday practice type paint palette, something that you're just going to use in your sketchbook to get you some practice in. And you wanted a paint that you could use and you weren't really worried about it being too precious because you didn't spend a lot of money on it and it still performs and works relatively well, then I would say, yeah, it's definitely not, they're definitely not bad at all. All right. So let's take a look at some things that were done with them here and there. Of course, you guys remember when we first unboxed them, we did this illustration together in this Hunter Mule book. Now, I've said a million times, I'm not a huge fan of this paper, so I'm trying to use it up. And this is the paper that I noticed that there was a bit of a color shift on. Now, this is like a tone 10, 100 and, tone, I always want to say 117, but it's a tone 10, 96-pound paper. So it does have a bit of a color to the background, and the illustration did not turn out too bad. It wasn't something we were trying to do a masterpiece with, but you can see, if you remember when this was done, you can see the bit of color shift from the really watered down sections. And this is on that tan paper, and this has been closed up inside of a sketchbook. So, just, take kind of commit that to memory. All right. The next thing that I tested them on was off of the off camera. I don't know. I was just kind of playing around. I didn't have much of a plan with this. I just really wanted to see what other colors I could achieve from mixing, how the paints would layer, whether or not they would glaze, and still allow me to see the previous layer that I put down. How deep could I get the saturation, which you see back there on the mountains? And for the most part, this was a relatively enjoyable project. I did not have too much of an issue with it, and it kind of spun off another project that I did with watercolor pencils. It mixed well. They played well with gouache. They played well with my watercolor markers. So that let me know that I could definitely use them in mixed media aspect without any issues. They didn't fight one another. And this one held the saturation a lot better. Now, this is a 100% cotton paper. So if I had to make a suggestion, my suggestion would be that if this was something you decided to source and add to your art supply collection, that, grab you a pad of 100% cotton watercolor paper to paint or to use them on, because you're going to get the best result there. And here there is much less of a shift, even with the super watery parts, than there was on this 90-pound paper. So there's that. And then because I always try to get at least three illustrations, whether they're great or not, under my belt before I give a review, because I want to make sure that I've used the paints and not just swatched them out. Now, there's nothing against those people out there that do reviews based on just swatching. If that is your capability, I take my hats off to you. I personally feel like there are so many different characteristics that a paint has that you can't see all of those characteristics just from swatching the paint. The true way to know how a product is going to really work, especially with your painting style, is to paint with it. So I always try to get at least two, maybe three paintings under my belt before I decide to give you guys my opinion on a product. With this said, inside my little handmade sketchbook I did, I painted another landscape. You guys know I don't know why I've been so landscape heavy lately, but I will say I've learned a lot. So I painted this landscape. It's pretty green, but I was really trying to mix the colors to see how dark I could get greens. And this one I did a little bit lighter. You have your more darker tones towards the front, and your cooler, darker tones towards the front, and your warmer tones are kind of mid-ground, background, which is a little bit different from the way I normally paint. But once it was all said and done, I was pretty pleased with the way this one came out. And it was just another example of how well the paints will work depending on the paper type. Now, this is a 140-pound cold pressed acid free wood pulp paper. This sketchbook is constructed of Artist Loft level 2. artist watercolor paper. You guys have heard me tell you a million times that I like that paper. I think it's a really good practice paper. And I think that it held the saturation of the color really well. This was painted maybe 2 days ago. Yeah, maybe 2 days ago in preparation for this review. So overall, here is what I have discovered. The paints are pretty much semi-transparent. You're not going to have any layering issues with them. They glazed fine. They do not mix to make mud quickly, not unless you're trying to push it that way. They lift off the paper relatively well. They work good with other products like markers and gouache, uh, graphite inks. Didn't have any issues with that. They work pretty decently on both 100% cotton watercolor paper as well as 140-pound wood pulp paper. The only one I feel like there was a bit of a shift with was on the lighter paper, and that could have a lot to do with the fact that it's a colored tone paper versus a stark white paper like the Artist Loft and the Art Beat 100% Cotton Paper was. So I feel like those are all things to keep in mind. Now let's talk price before we get into final recommendations. Now I do believe, I do believe, I do believe I looked this up when we first did the unboxing, right? I think I did. And if I'm not mistaken, the paint paddle was around 12, $13. I think that's right. I think that's right. Hold on. We're finna pull it up and see. I should have already had this pulled up, so I will apologize to you for that, my friends. Here we go. Jackson's. So this 12 half pan pocket box and brush currently listed for $14.10. The only place I know that you can get it from is Jackson's Art. Now, if you happen to be interested in this, once this live is over and I get to the edits for this live, I will be sure to include the link for this set from Jackson's Art in the video description. Now, you should know that this is not the only size set. There is a bigger 40, well, is it gonna let me go to it? There we go. There is a bigger 40 half pan set with a water brush and a standard brush included in that set. If 12 colors are not enough for you, or if you feel like this will be something, and you know, I do not feel like it's a bad set for like an extreme beginner. I do not feel like it's a bad set for a school student. I do not feel like it's a bad set for like if you do paint parties or if you do painting classes where you teach large adult classes and you need to put supplies in the middle of the table, then anything like that, I could definitely see this being used for. It's just not a set that I would pull to try to do a piece of commission work or anything that I would use for anything that I was creating that I knew I would be hanging in museum conditions or in any type of direct sunlight. Even with that said, I still think that the illustration would hold up quite a while before you saw any dramatic changes in your artwork or your creation. So, yeah, that's that on that. If I had to give these paints a star rating, as I normally do, on a scale of 1 to 5, then this particular set is going to fall in the range of about a 3 for me. And let me explain why. One of the biggest issues I have with any watercolor set is whether or not the audience that you're advertising to cares about it or not. You never know when someone who will might come along and check out your products. So I do think that it is important to include the artist's information with products. I understand that everybody doesn't care about that, but there's 50% of artists who do. And I think that art companies should kind of straddle the fence in that particular department and kind of cater to both sides. If they don't care about the light fads and the pigment information, then the artist doesn't have to pay attention to it. But if they do care about that, you may be losing a potential customer because you aren't providing that information. So there's my thought process on one point being gone. The second point being gone to drop them down to a 3 for me was the fact that I did not have an enjoyable experience with them painting on all types of paper. Now, there are some things that I have not shown you guys simply because they just didn't make the cut. I mean, there is like two illustrations that I started and threw away. One of them was on Canson XL paper, and the Canson XL paper just did not. I don't know. They just didn't seem to agree. I tried that particular illustration three different times, and all three times I was just very displeased with it, which only goes to show you that you are not going to always like every single thing that you create. Okay. Every artist on the face of the planet goes through that, I promise. So, for those reasons, um, I'm going to place them at about a three. Would I recommend the paints? I would recommend the paints. I think that they're affordable. I just need you to go into it understanding that there are better chances. You could probably save your money, you know, add a couple of other dollars to the 14 that you're going to spend for this set, and then go ahead and get you an entry level professional watercolor set, say like White Knights, maybe a Paul Rubens. There is Shinhan. There are even mixing sets of Windsor and, well, I'm not going to say Windsor and Newton professional. That would be more so on the Cotman side. But even De La Roni, Aquafine, um, Van Gogh, there are several other brands of paints out there that offer you the artist information side that are definitely pigment based, that just by adding 5 or 6 more dollars to the amount that you would spend for this set, that you could get that one. That's not me trying to discourage you from this set. We all have to make our own informed decisions, and it's just my hope that the information I've presented you with today in this live, if you call it live or if you're watching it in replay, has been enough to help you make an informed decision about whether or not this is something that you would want to purchase or play with. But not a bad set, not a bad set. I would definitely recommend it for beginners, and I wouldn't hesitate to kind of buy it if I was putting together like Christmas sets to give away. It's not a bad paint. It's not a bad paint. If you can deal with the fact that it is a bit goopy when it's super wet, the fact that it doesn't have artist information, um, outside of that, I didn't find any major issues for just everyday common painting. Just don't sell what you paint with it. Don't sell what you paint with it. Or if you do sell it, let me take that back. If you do sell it, just make sure you disclose up front that it was painted with a non-artist set so that the consumer would be 100% aware of what they're spending their money for. All right, friends. So that's pretty much going to wrap everything up for today. I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining me for this live review of the Arta Watercolor Pocket Box. Hopefully, you picked up on some information that you found helpful, something that you liked, or you just enjoyed some of the discussion. If you did, please, please, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Sprinkle a little love. It's going to help the algorithm push it in front of other wonderful viewers like yourself so that we can build this art community and find some other like-minded artists. If you choose to share the video, thank you so much. Sharing is caring, and it really does a lot to help the channel grow. So I cannot even tell you how much I appreciate that. Drop your comments in the comment section if you're watching the video in replay. Let me know your thoughts on the review, your thoughts on the product. Have you used these paints before? If you have, what do you think of them? Maybe your opinion can help somebody else out that watches the video in replay. So be sure to drop your thoughts in the comment section, not in the live. Okay. If you're new to the channel and returning and you haven't subscribed, do consider hitting that subscription button and that notification bell so that hopefully YouTube will notify you of when we go live and when we upload. If not, then just know that the schedule here is always the same. Every Monday morning at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time, we're going to go live. Every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, there is a pre-recorded video release. And then, of course, any surprise lives or any surprise videos that are coming out on the channel, I do try to notify you a couple of days in advance of that happening. So definitely keep your eyes out for that. You can check the video description once the edit of this video goes up for all of the relevant links. I continue to encourage you guys to check out and visit the Defiant Art website on a regular basis, because things are always changing. And sooner than later, we're going to have more products that will be available for the general public going up on the site, just in case you find something that interests you or tickles your fancy. You'll also find the link for the most recommended product list, which I am in the process of updating. You'll also find a link for the artist wish list in case you decide you would like to help support the channel with a sponsored product. You're going to find the link for Instagram, Palm Street, Patreon, and the YouTube page, as well as the YouTube Facebook group, Paints, Pencils, Pastels, and Markers. So, lots of different ways to stay connected with the Defiant Art Thrifty community. Thank you guys so very much. Enjoy the rest of your week. Don't forget to catch this Wednesday's video release. And remember, as I tell you at the end of every live and at the end of every video, just keep creating, my friends.